This is the E-Commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It's awesome to have you along for the ride today, and it is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast. We've got a double header today. We've got two heavy hitters on the podcast, which is very rare. I don't often have two guests from the same brand or company on the pod, so it is awesome to have ZABE, AGHA, and RAMEET KOHLI on the pod from Metrical. Welcome to the pod, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having us, Jason.
Yeah, great to be here, Jason. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to have you guys with me today. It's like I said, it's not often I get the pleasure of having two heavy hitters here to talk about their amazing technology. But before we jump into what Metrical does and how it came to be, how did you two gentlemen come to even be in this space? But it's interesting because I fell into this industry 24 years ago, and I can't imagine doing anything else now. It is literally my life, and I love it, and I can't wait to get up every day and do what I do. And almost everybody else that has a few gray hairs on their head like me came into it. It's not like they went to university, studied e-commerce, and then got out, and they've been doing it ever since. It's very rare that's the case, and so people oftentimes fall into this industry. So how did you guys get into the industry?
Yeah, first of all, if you think you have gray hairs, this guy, I'll kick it off for me, and then maybe, Rameet's perpetually young.
Yes, I see it. You do look young, Rameet. I will give you that.
The space that we're actually in, the story behind the story is actually Rameet and I met in our undergraduate. So we've known each other from our teens, basically.
Yeah.
And really started getting a relationship going there. Rameet's an amazing networker and somebody that's been really critical, not only for me, but also for the business in terms of building relationships. He's got the most amazing memory. I constantly ping him 3 or 4 times a day and, hey, who was that guy? Hey, who was this person? Hey, when did we meet? And he just always remembers everything. That's been fantastic for me. But we basically came back together about 6-7 years ago when I had started Metrical initially as a consultancy. I was running e-commerce at Autodesk, which is a large software design company here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And after I had left and I'd started Metrical initially as a customer experience solution, I realized that I needed to grow it more than just like this typical steady state and wanted to do a little bit more of a hockey stick. And just then Rameet was getting off of a startup that he was doing. And so we were always in touch, but found a way of being able to work together. And it's been, I would say, almost marital bliss since.
You know, we tell everyone we've known each other longer than we've known our wives. Technically, Zabe's known his wife longer than me, but in terms of my other partner in life, it's been Zabe. It's been a long time. But yeah, I was in the startup world. I was at an Internet of Things startup when Zabe and I started just chatting again about, boy, we used to talk about doing something together and wouldn't be great to try something. And yeah, the timing just worked out right in terms of, hey, why don't we see what we can do with what he's already built with Metrical and try to take it to the next level. And yeah, 6-7 years later, here we are sitting on something special.
And you guys make a very good point, which is that oftentimes friendships can degenerate very quickly once you go into business together. I like you guys, I was very lucky in my first business, which was an e-commerce pure play, to have a business partner who was also a dear friend. And we never had any arguments whatsoever. And I think that for us, one of the reasons, I'd love you guys to validate this from your side, one of the reasons is because our skill sets were so vastly different. We didn't really have much overlap in what we were doing. I was responsible for all the e-com and digital marketing side of the business, and he was responsible for all the sourcing and the technology and all that sort of stuff for the business, for all the products we were selling and logistics and all that sort of stuff. And sure, we would advise each other and we would consult with each other, of course, but because we almost had this separation of responsibilities and this delegation of responsibilities was pretty clear cut between us, there wasn't really a lot to argue about. It was like I couldn't really question him on his stuff because he's better at it than me and vice versa. And it just seemed to work really well. And it feels like you guys have your unique skill sets and you fuse those together to build an amazing business.
That's pretty spot on, actually. I don't think I really even thought about it until you just brought it up. I think I tend to be focused on the product and the technology, and Rameet tends to be really helpful. And by the way, I think it's also not only where we tend to be focused, but like where do we like working and where do we not like working. So for me, the idea of back office, running contracts, trying to figure out how to negotiate pricing and all that sort of stuff is a world that I hate, and he's really good at it. And on the flip side, I really like focusing on product and technology. And I think I tend to be decent at it. And the thing where we tend to come together is basically sales. That's where like the connecting bridge between us, where we're like, hey, we need to be on the same page about this because we need to make sure that we're taking the company in the same direction. But that's a great observation that I hadn't really even, that's why it works.
Yeah. By the way, I hate doing the accounting. But anyway,
Damn it! You're fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a spot on example of how two friends can also work together as business partners.
Yeah, no question about that. And why Metrical, right? You say your sort of tagline is more carts, more customers, more revenue. So I'm guessing that you are predicts which visitors would have left your site without purchasing, converts them into customers in real time in session. So I would classify you as an exit intent platform. That's the terminology I would use based on the software categories that I know exist in the e-commerce world. I would consider that an exit intent platform. And then you're obviously injecting something at that point of exit intent, whether that be they're about ready to go up and click the X to exit, the X to close the window, or they're ready to navigate away and go to another URL, or whatever it might be. You're detecting that's happening. You're saying, okay, we're either going to give a pop-up, or we're going to give a promotion or an offer, or whatever it might be. We're going to try to intercept that exit intent, and we're going to try to convert them back into either a further browser or a buyer, ideally, someone that can convert in the moment. So as I understand it, in full transparency, never used your platform before, so I'm just reading what's on the tin, but that's what I assume the technology does. But before you get into the details of that, why that technology, why that platform, and why not any of the other 100 different things you could be doing in e-com?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that for the most part, in terms of the philosophy of what we do, you're on the money. The area that we differ is that, and the thing that sort of differentiates us from the broader rubric of exit intent technology is that we don't do any exit intent. So what we've done is over the course of the last few years is we've built a whole bunch of machine learning models. AI is very popular right now. Machine learning is like a part of that larger AI umbrella, as you're probably aware. Everyone's saying that they're doing AI of one sort or another, and you can say we're doing AI as well, but really the core and the heart of what we do is machine learning. What we do is that we actually predict the likelihood of abandonment without looking at exit intent. So what we have is a whole bunch of data. We actually have over 2.7 trillion interaction data points in terms of purchase behavior and abandonment behavior across multiple retailers. And what we have is basically these models that we've built so that when you come to a product detail page from a certain ad or organically, and that product page is of a certain price or a category or a color, our algorithms in real time start predicting the likelihood of what your next behavior is going to be. So we predict, is this person going to stay on the site and look at more PDPs? Are they going to abandon their site? And that $5 or $2 I spent for that click to get them to the site, that's going to be wasted. So the algorithm is figuring that out in real time. And then we're saying, okay, those are the people that we want to engage with. And that specifically goes to your original question, which is like, why this area? And what we ended up finding was that when you looked at exit intent and when you looked at the broader e-commerce funnel, what you ended up finding was that a lot of the solutions that were focused on trying to keep the customer or get the customer to come back were really not that intelligent. They were very simplistic. They looked at things like how quickly did you scroll on your phone? Did your mouse move up into the right-hand side? And if so, then let's throw somebody a pop-up. But the reality is, if you're running a browser right now, you probably, unless you're some sort of a genius, you probably have at least 4 or 5 window tabs open. I have probably too many obscenely number of window tabs open, and I'm constantly moving. I'm going from one here to Gmail to Reddit, whatever it is. And so my mouse is constantly moving. But for a retailer, what that means is that you're basically saying, oh, he's leaving, she's leaving all the time. So let's give a promo, let's give a promo, let's give a promo. And that means not only are you interrupting the customer's flow, but you're also giving away margin. And that's a huge portion of this, is that we want to figure out, and what we've been working on is how do you engage with people intelligently so that the retailer isn't giving away margin to every single person that moves their mouse up and to the right? How do you make sure that you're not annoying the customer? And just as interestingly, how do you make sure you don't interact with people that are on the happy path to purchase? So if they're an existing customer, if they're a loyal customer, if there's somebody that is constantly coming back to the website or is a buyer, you shouldn't be giving away margins and you shouldn't be giving them promos. And so our solution is really focused on finding a way of being able to do in-session marketing in the moment. So we're not that concerned about you not coming back. That's something that we think that retargeting and remarketing will take care of. But we want want to engage with you while you're still on the website. And we do that in a way that preserves margin for the retailer. It doesn't annoy the customer. It allows the retailer to be able to preserve the margin by not giving away discounts to everybody. And overall, we have this approach that allows you as a retailer to measure the incremental revenue that we're generating so that you can actually see the real hard dollars that we make.
Yeah, and it's important to stress that our solution is not a solution that's there to replace retargeting and email reminders that ZABE has mentioned. We're quite complementary. Those are solutions that are important because, look, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, people are still going to leave and you're going to still need to find a way to get them back. So folks that are vendors that are focused more top of the funnel, they're trying to collect email addresses, those that are trying to get people to come back, those are important, and our customers use those solutions. What Metrical is doing is really filling the gap in the middle. Look, you have shopper hesitation occurring throughout your funnel. We can figure out where that hesitation is and then help move those people along the shopping funnel. And so, like I said, all of our customers are able to use us along with other solution providers to really help them have this sort of end-to-end solution, so to speak, where they're really trying to make sure no one's falling through the cracks. And even if they do, there's a way to bring them back.
Yeah, and I guess also you help to differentiate between shopper hesitation that is normal and abnormal shopper hesitation. So as you said, ZABE, someone might pop to another tab, they've taken a phone call, they're on a call like this where they're recording a podcast. I've got 2 or 3 e-commerce websites open right now because I'm looking for a replacement headset and a few other things. But I have to take this call, so I'll go back to those websites, I'll browse further, etc. So you guys can better differentiate between shoppers who are hesitating for all the normal reasons the shoppers hesitate versus, I guess, the intent of actually abandoning a cart, leaving a website permanently, not completing the purchase within 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm guessing that you also differentiate because a lot of the search, merch, and personalization platforms, because as I see it, you sit fairly and squarely between those platforms that are search, merch, personalization platforms. You sit fairly and squarely between those and CRO enhancement platforms. Like basically you and also post-purchase platforms. You sit in the middle between those two suites of technology, but you personalize, it sounds anyway, that you personalize to the point that many search merch platforms do not, meaning that they use purely wisdom of the crowd technology. That's the way that they work. So they don't take into account authenticated versus unauthenticated and what we know about the person who is authenticated and their past buying behavior. We're working purely off wisdom of the crowd. And it sounds like you guys are taking both into account. You're saying, okay, we've got wisdom of the crowd and machine learning that's run across these millions of sessions across all the websites that use our technology, but we also start to understand the individual user once they're authenticated and we recognize who they are, whether that be through a specific user ID that's unauthenticated that then gets merged with their account once they create their account or authenticate and we know who they are. We're now going to take into account their specific user behavior as well. And that to me feels like a unique selling point of your technology.
For a guy that hasn't worked with us before and just read our website, that's amazingly astute. So
I just want to add before I forget, I would say you dropped the word personalized several times. I think when you think about Metrical, it's more about optimize than personalize. And what we're really trying to do is help the retailers essentially be able to optimize their on-site messaging and engagement so that it turns into a more personal experience for those shoppers, while at the same time, as Zabe mentioned earlier, being able for the retailer brand to preserve their margins. So that's how I would say we differentiate ourselves from your typical personalization solutions. We're really focused on helping the retailer brand better optimize what they're doing on the site.
If I can add one more piece to that, which is that the optimization and a little bit of the personalization that you're talking about really happens around the kind of messaging that is really designed to get the shopper to move to that next step in the funnel. And one of the largest sporting retailers in the United States uses our software specifically to dynamically update over 800 products on their website every 48 hours to show what's the most recently hot item from a social proof point of view. And so our software in the background is, in addition to looking at the historical behavior of people, it does a ton of automation and helps them figure out, okay, here's hundreds of products that are the most popular, and they should automatically be updated every 48 hours rather than having some product manager go in there and update them manually.
And what areas do you guys impact from a UX and UI perspective? So if we compare you to, say, a Nosto, for example, they've got what they call their placements, and most search and merch platforms have what they call placements, where there might be a custom banner or bar on category pages. There might be a product recommendation panel on a PDP. There might be a product recommendation panel in the cart page, etc. So they have these different placements where they can inject both product cards as well as content cards. If there's, for example, a relevant blog post that might be relevant to that searcher, they can place that there where you can click through and you can find more information, or click you through to a specific section of a PDP that gives more information about the product, or a table of data or attributes or whatever. So when we think about your platform, are you taking control of banners, pop-ups, conversion bars, product placements? Like, where are the key UX UI impact points that you guys own through the shopper journey?
Yeah. So using Nosto as a specific example, we don't do anything that Nosto does, but what we do is we make it better. So for example, if it turns out that Nosto is doing personalized product recommendations, right now what they're doing is they're doing those personalized product recommendations for everybody. What Metrical will tell the retailer that's using Nosto is that this is when you should show somebody those personalized recommendations, because that's what's going to be needed in order to keep them on the website. And this is somebody that you shouldn't show those personalized recommendations to, because they're already going to buy this product. So let's not distract them from that purchase. So we end up interacting with the customer at a whole bunch of different points of the journey. So everywhere from home to product detail page, to product PLPs, category pages, to search, to cart. We have interactions with the customer at all these different points, but we're not really focused on providing recommendations or having any sort of messaging that pops up specifically that it talks about other products. We leverage the existing marketing of the retailer to be able to engage that customer at that next level. So we can use a Nosto, or we can use a recommendation solution from Adobe, whatever it is. But we have this approach that rather than spraying and praying to everybody and hoping that it works, use Metrical to be able to figure out who to engage with and who not to engage with. And sometimes Metrical will do that. And sometimes what Metrical will do is that the retailer might be running a free shipping campaign while they're offering a 10% off campaign. And what Metrical will do is say, okay, look, we know both of these campaigns are running, and we know that they're site-wide. So what Metrical will do is actually simultaneously show 10% off to one group of people, show free shipping to the other group of people, and then do a real-time optimization of actually which one works the best for which category or for which product. And then moving forward, everyone that comes to that site sees only the winner of that category of that product. So a lot of our influence in terms of UX and UI is on site. We are touching the messaging. We are showing a relevant search a promotion banner. But in many cases, we're taking the marketing that's already there and saying, okay, what should be shown and what shouldn't be shown.
So that leads to my next question, or my next assumption, which you can validate or not validate, that your deep integrations with quiz commerce platforms like Jebit, or marketing automation platforms like Klaviyo, or personalization platforms like Anosto, or any of these search merch platforms, it feels like integration, first of all, deep integrations with the commerce platforms themselves and their native functionality around promotions and conversion bars and all the rest. It feels like the integrations of your platform into all those other supporting technologies that provide any form of a messaging or marketing layer on the website that gets presented to the customer, it feels like those integrations become mission critical for you guys to be able to deliver on your value proposition.
Yeah, but at the same time, you run across retailers that have either built their own homegrown systems, or they don't have certain types of systems. We work with customers that have a Klaviyo or they have an Attentive, and they're using that in order to be able to capture email addresses or SMS phone numbers from customers so that they can send SMS emails to. And in those cases, what we can do is help orchestrate those so that rather than showing that same pop-up to every single person that comes to your homepage, you show them only for the people that should see it, but you don't show it to the people that are likely to actually stay on the homepage and browse the website. Because that, as everybody knows, 99% of people see those, the first thing they do is close it because they just don't want to deal with it. And our software figures out that in those cases, who to show it to and who not to show it to. In other cases, you've got retailers that don't have some of those solutions. And in those cases, what we do is we say, look, tell us about your existing marketing calendar. Tell us what it is that you guys are working on this week, next month. And then our system figures out how do we actually display that messaging to the customer on site in such a way where we leverage the net marketing you were already going to use, but drive a lot more effectiveness. And we run everything through an A/B testing platform that we've built that allows us to be able to test the efficacy of Metrical's model-based predictions and recommendations against a control group, so you can see how much of a lift is Metrical actually providing.
And I just wanted to add, just going back to what you mentioned earlier in terms of all the other solutions that are being used. Metrical, you can think of us as a way, as a conductor of sorts, like an orchestrator. And so some of our customers will use us in that way, as they mentioned, where helping them use a Nosto more efficiently or use a Klaviyo more efficiently. And so Metrical can operate in that way, or if it's a situation where no solutions are being used, everything's say homegrown, we can come in and just take over that whole funnel for that marketing promo team if that's what they desire.
And so you would tap, in that scenario, you would tap into the native, for example, the Shopify automatic promotions or the BigCommerce promotions engine, for example, that has rules in there around specific promotions being triggered at certain times. You've got your catalog price rules, shopping cart price rules. You've got this combination of offers and promos that might be live at any given point in time. And so you're tapping into that so that the customer doesn't get cognitive overload and be shown all things at all times. And you're saying, look, let's selectively show this to the shoppers that, for example, maybe have historically a propensity to discount. If 85% of the time their purchases include an item that's discounted, then they're a high propensity to discount client in order to drive conversion with that client. But if they only have a 20% propensity to discount, then why would we want to show promotions to these customers that are likely to buy at full price anyway, because they're a loyal customer of ours? And then it also comes down to, have they bought with us one time before, 5 times before, 10 times, or 50 times before? Also, their intent to purchase through us is going to be different because they've shown previous intent to purchase with us. And we have a lot more of a track record to go on how they buy through us, what they buy through us, and the attributes of the products that they buy through us. So we've got a lot more data to work with basically on what we recommend.
And I would add 2 more dimensions to that. One is, what's the origin of that traffic? Is it paid or organic? If you're paying a lot of money for that traffic, you may have a different incentive model for what you want to do with that customer when they're on the website versus when it's organic traffic. So that's one element. And then the other thing that I would add to that is that a lot of customer preference in terms of what they want to do for a browse or for purchase is also dependent on characteristics about the product. So what's its price? What's its durability? What's its color? Do they have the size that I'm looking for? And so we take that into consideration as well. So we're looking at those additional dimensions so that you can basically say that we've got this 4-dimensional view of the on-site experience for the customer. Where are they coming from? What are they doing? And what are they looking at? So that with all of those different vectors basically brought into the same point at once, Metrical's figuring out that, okay, for each individual, depending on where they came from, depending on what they're looking at, what promotions are available, what should we do with this customer to make sure that they stay on the site, or they build a cart, or they check out.
And all of this is based off of 100% anonymous data.
Great point. Yeah.
We do not deal with any personal data, and that does make us somewhat unique, I think. So when it comes to Jason, there's all these privacy laws popping up, from GDPR to even each individual state in this country. And because the way we've built our solution and how we are not reliant on PII data, it's been one, our customers breathe a sigh of relief in terms of using us. And 2, for us, it's much easier to move conversations forward with retail and brand prospects because of that capability.
Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you. And now back to your listening. And one of the challenges that I have seen that most search, merch personalization, and even exit intent platforms have is that I, as a customer who have a historical track record with a given website, I may come on the odd occasion, for example, and not be buying for me. Might be buying a gift for someone else. I might be, there are certain buying scenarios where that historical data that is known about me is not really relevant to this purchasing or shopping session. And so we have this conflict between hyper personalization and surprise and delight, and individual shopping sessions being catered and unique for that buyer. And so how do you guys overcome some of those challenges where someone might be, I log on to, for example, I might log on to a website in Australia specifically to buy some flowers for my mom for Mother's Day, for example, whereas historically, maybe I've only, through that website, I've only ever bought Valentine's Day flowers for my wife, for example. And so how do you balance that tension between, okay, hyper personalization, we want to really try to get as close as possible as we possibly can to understanding the exact shopping intent of this individual shopper that's on the website right here, right now, and the need to also surprise and delight, also the need to expose new items from the catalog, also to cater for scenarios where they're shopping for somebody else, not themselves. There's a little bit of tension there, right? And so how do you guys and your technology take those scenarios into account?
Yeah, so first off, it's very hard. And this is where I think machine learning actually shines, because one of the things that you get from machine learning is that it's looking at the behavior of an individual over time. And by the way, I'll get back to your question. But one of the things that we've also built is this ability to be able to actually track the customer over time and see what it is that they're doing anonymously, that we have this ID. And so we know what their behavior is every single time that they come to the website. So that's where machine learning really kicks in and says, okay, look, this person is constantly buying Valentine's Day gifts, and now they're looking at flowers. This is outside of the normal pattern that we're expecting. And so the experience should be different. I think the reality is that if you were trying to do this on a one-to-one basis as an individual, you'd be guessing. Right, you constantly be like, oh, what is this person doing? Can I react fast enough based on what they're doing on the website? I think everyone sort of defaults to rules. And the problem with the rules is that they're not flexible. And so the machine learning piece is where this comes in and says, okay, in milliseconds, we can look at the history of an individual, figure out what they've tended to do in the past, and see what they're doing now or what they're looking at now. Is it consistent with their history, or is it different than their history? And if it's different, do we need to treat them differently? The reality, though, is that you need a human in this conversation. We're not at a point yet where any retailer can say, look, I'm completely willing to give everything to the machines and let them decide what people see, when they see it, how they see it. Retailers have a whole bunch of considerations that they have on their own in terms of margin, profitability, time, inventory, how long things can sit on the shelves, things of that type. And so there's got to be somebody involved in that loop to make decisions about what people can and can't see, and when they should and shouldn't see, and what should people see at a high level. The reality is that machine learning is so complex that a machine may say, look, hey, there's 900 possibilities. And for somebody to come up with 900 possibilities every week or two is going to be impossible. So what we do is that we say, look, we're going to classify these possibilities for you into large groups. So we think that there's 4 major typical outcomes for you based on the machine learning. And now we need you to do, from a marketing point of view, is plan for those 4 major outcomes, and then Metrical will execute those on the site for you in real time, measure them against a control, and show you how each one of those did.
And what we do, because to Zabe's point, is retailers and brands, they want to own their messaging. They're very particular about what that messaging, what needs to get out on the site, and who needs to be seeing that messaging. And so we built a solution that's quite flexible, that essentially allows the retailer brand to feed into Metrical the messaging they want. And what Metrical does so well is that it begins to figure out, of those messages, what is the most effective and what is not. And then it begins to create this list, and then allows the retailer brand then adjust based off of that. So then eventually you're getting into a flow of the retailer brand learning from our machine learning in terms of what is the messaging that really works, creating it, and then putting it into the system, and then the cycle continues.
And for those brands that don't yet have, I don't know, maybe they're not running Klaviyo, or they're not running some sort of pop-up technology, or maybe they're not running any quiz commerce technology, or they're not running any of the search merch personalization technologies. For those that aren't running those things, or are running very basic, maybe simple Shopify app versions of these things, and they're not connected to a big platform in the back end, in other words, a rules-based app, as opposed to something that's running off of a machine learning-based back end, are you guys able to then also drive the actual messaging layer itself to where you guys can actually own the pop-up layer? You can own the messaging layer. You can create the messages and inject them into the right pages at the right times. So if they don't have any of those things, you can own that piece as well.
Yes, and in fact, that's how we started the business originally, which was actually that we were actually doing the messaging layer, and then over time realized that, oh, a lot of these customers already have the Shopify or they have a Nosto or whatever it is, and so we don't necessarily need to build it. We can just leverage what they're already doing. But in many cases, you do find that we have customers that come to us and say, hey, we want this new capability. We don't have an existing, even though we've got the Nosto, we've got a Adobe, and we've got Attentive or Wonderkind, we don't have this capability. And what we can do is build that very quickly. We've got a very agile team. We've been able to turn around software within 24 to 48 hours, fully tested and deployed in production sites doing a million visits a day. And the software is immediately able to actually meet that customer's objectives. Again, always running against a control group to see how effective that it is.
And I feel like this also functions in some respects almost like a suppression management list. You know how with Klaviyo, they'll auto suppress if somebody doesn't open 5 emails in a row, then they'll automatically suppress them for 2-3 cents or whatever it is. Or if they obviously if they unsubscribe, then they completely suppress them permanently, or they'll set up other suppression rules, right? They'll say, look, if they opened but they didn't buy, then maybe we will personalize the next email in a certain way that will hopefully promote a purchase, or we'll drop them into a workflow that has skips and resumes and other workflows built into it, or other promotions in the fork, or we're going to drop them into an A/B testing layer of some variety that we're going to test these different things. It feels like you guys help to prevent over messaging in the sense that there are a lot of these technologies that don't talk to each other. So you've got Klaviyo that doesn't necessarily talk to Nosto, and Nosto can, of course, put a personalization block inside of a Klaviyo email that's going to then pull back to Nosto to populate on open of the email. But in terms of the on-site experience, a lot of these individual technologies, the abandoned cart technologies, the exit intent technologies, the marketing automation technologies, the personalization technologies, they don't necessarily all naturally share data together unless you custom integrate them. And as a result of that, you can end up in a scenario where we're now just smashing the customer with multiple different messages during that one individual browse session. And it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it feels like you guys can dial back that over personalization or that over messaging and say, look, sure, you've got these 5 pieces of technology running on the website that have their own placements, they have their own positioning, they've got their own messaging. You've got push notification platforms. You have got, even Gorgeous now has automatic chat pop-ups for specific use cases when it's personalized, right? You can opt into that where, okay, a person takes this certain behavior, it's these pages, we're going to pop up a specific message automatically for them to try to promote them to convert. So there are so many vectors for messaging on a website today. If they're running all of those pieces of technology concurrently, it's overwhelming. And it can be very overwhelming for the site visitor too as they navigate the website. So it feels like you're going to selectively suppress some of these messaging positions so that the customer doesn't get overwhelmed.
When it's the right time. And for some people. And so how do you figure out that some people need to see 2 of those and not the other 3, and some people need to see 1 and not 4? And how do you make sure some people see none of them? If you've got a loyal customer that buys from you every 3 to 5 weeks and they're spending $85 per order, then why are you touching them at all? Let them just come in, do their thing, buy, and get out, because that's their pattern. And this is where the power of the machine learning comes in and says, okay, how do we figure out how to orchestrate? How do you figure out what gets seen, what gets suppressed, so that we can figure out what's the minimal touch with the highest effectiveness to drive that conversion?
Ramit, anything to add there?
No, I think, again, just going back to what I said earlier, we're not about trying to personalize the experience for every single shopper. What we're trying to do is optimize the experience again for both the shopper and the retailer brand, right? As a shopper, some people, like ZABE said, they're coming in, they know what they want to get out. Some are coming in, they have no idea what they want. They're window shopping, they're hesitant, whatever. And so we're able to pick up on those patterns instantly and then determine, do we suppress or do we engage? And that is constantly happening in real time, like with millions of visitors coming to the site. And all of that's running in the background. And yeah, that's been the focus of what we've been doing over the last few years.
I think we've been talking a lot about machine learning. One of the key components of this is that you need enough data in order for the machine learning to be effective. So one of the things that we've had to learn through trial and error is that what kind of a customer do you work with? And so for us, we started working with retailers that typically tend to be at least $50 to $75 million in e-com revenue, and then go up from there. In the beginning, we started with, I think we had over 170 Shopify installs, and found that a lot of them were just too small, and that they didn't have either enough data or there was too much churn with regards to whether to actually continue using Shopify. And so over the years, like I said, we've been doing this for over 6 years now. We've learned that what we really need to do is focus on middle and upper market. And so most of our customers tend to today be retailers on the smaller end that are either 100 million or $1 billion plus US retailers.
Just to give you an idea of the customers we work with, as Dave said, they can range from your large enterprise retailers to more of your what we call mid-tier, but generally generating 50, most likely over 100 million in annual online recurring revenue. That's our sweet spot where we can really make an impact because it's the right mix of site visitors, revenue being generated, overall data volume, where Metrical can really start to churn out quality engagements and quality non-engagements to ensure a positive result, which is an increased incremental revenue.
And how much does the cross-pollination of data, I know there's no PII, but I'm just saying the cross-pollination of the models, the machine learning models that you're working with, how much does that cross-pollination of data across merchants start to impact your ability to do this at scale, even from day dot, meaning that, okay, cool, when we come in, obviously we can personalize for a brand's specific audience. The more user data we get from that specific brand, the better we can do. But we start with a really good baseline based on all the learning across all the other brands we've ever worked with and continue to work with, feeding data into the Borg, so to speak. We're starting from a pretty good baseline of personalization, of being able to understand buyer behavior on customers in maybe this specific vertical or e-commerce customers full stop. We've got a good enough, big enough baseline of data that we can come in and we can be pretty effective from day dot, and then further personalize for that audience, for that brand's audience over time, to add an additional performance layer over the top of that.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the exact reasons why we have a pretty selective market that we go into. So we've got customers that are specifically apparel, accessories, shoes, beauty, and sporting goods at a high level. We're now starting to talk to people that are in a few of the side verticals related to them. But the benefit of that is that the machine learning tends to be a lot more intelligent. Today, we don't deal with furniture companies. If the purchase behavior for somebody that's buying a sofa is going to be drastically different than a mom that's buying clothes for her kids. And so we can look at the behaviors of those verticals that I was just talking about, where you see like a common experience in terms of how the customer is actually engaging with the website. And so our solutions tend to be in those verticals specifically for that reason.
Yeah, and I just want to add that today it's retailers, brands, it's focused on apparel, beauty, accessories. But what we've built is not limited to that. So I'll give you an example. We have already worked with companies outside of retail, in travel, hospitality, and financial services. As there's hesitation in those, whether you're trying to book a room or a plane ticket, whether you're applying for a credit card or checking account, or whether you're trying to get an insurance quote, there's hesitation, there's abandonment occurring. And over time, we believe that our solution can be helpful in those industries as well. One step at a time. We're still like a company that's punching above its weight class and slowly growing, but we're excited about the future. And we're really excited where we can take what we've built and be able to assist more than just retailers and brands.
And if I can add one more thing to that, I think we to pat ourselves on the back about the fact that we've actually never raised venture capital. So we bootstrapped the business, hit profitability in 2021. And as two co-founders that are running a business in Silicon Valley, by the way, where everybody raises money, and having done so successfully without you having run a company without having raised venture and then hit profitability is a pretty massive accomplishment. And if you look at our brands of customers of everywhere from huge retailers like Dick's Sporting Goods to Brooks Brothers and Fossil and JCPenney's and companies like Nespresso and Samsung that have all used our software, you can really start understanding that what a big accomplishment that is for such a small company.
And it helps with non-dilution as well, and it means you still own your company. So that's pretty nice. VC's great, but at the end of the day, you pretty rapidly find yourself in a position where, even if you have a massive exit at the end of the day, oftentimes if you don't have a meaningful ownership stake in the company, it could be pretty disappointing. And VCs oftentimes make technology companies do weird things, especially in terms of their go-to-market, in terms of their growth, in terms of just everything they do. It's targeted at hyper growth at all costs. And I think that isn't always the best way to grow a technology company. Kudos to you of not getting sucked into that world, that VC world that is so attractive for many technology platform vendors, but the devil's in the details there, unfortunately, and especially in the kind of ownership stake that those VCs get in the company. And oftentimes you're giving away out of the gate 20% of your business. And that's a painful place to start from, and it causes you to do abnormal things in the market. So kudos to you. And how do you guys make your money? Is it you're a SaaS platform? Is it like a fixed fee per month? Is it tiered? Is it based on the transactions that you help convert? Like, how do you make your money?
Yeah, so we have actually a couple of different models. What we've ended up finding is that because we work with companies that are 100 million revenue to companies that are doing over $1 billion in e-com revenue, there's actually different preferences in terms of what the customer wants. And so you'll work with customers where the finance office or CFO wants a lot of predictability, in which case what we do is we work with them to make sure that our pricing is structured in such a way where there's never any surprises. In other cases, you've got companies that are just wanting and addicted to the SaaS model, and they just really want some sort of a monthly or quarterly pricing model. And so what we'll do is put together something that's flexible. Our goal is to make sure that our customers see a 15 to 20x ROI when they work with Metrical. And so for them, at the end of the day, we're willing to put together any kind of package that's going to end up getting them more revenue and more customers while also keeping our business and organization happy and healthy.
Makes sense. And if we look out over the next 12 to 18 months on your roadmap, is there anything that your customers are asking you for today that you don't do yet? Or is there anything in the market, a gap in the market that you go, we don't do this today, but we think this is an important thing to add, a functionality to add to our platform? Or are there key integrations that you go, we don't integrate with these systems today, but it would make our platform perform a lot better if we did. So this is high on our priority list.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is actually
reality.
virtual.
I just wanted to say that because ZABE hates when I say it. But anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think the reality is actually more models. The predictive models that we built and we started the business with are specifically focused on cart abandonment and product detail page abandonment, because that's where a lot of traffic goes and that's where you have a lot of leakage. But one of the things that we've been learning from our customers is that you get bounces everywhere throughout the journey, right? You know that. You got people that are coming to the homepage and they're bouncing. I talked to actually a huge brand today, one of our customers, that when we looked at the data together, we found out that 45% of their visits to their product listing pages were just bouncing traffic. Some categories and products had a 90% bounce rate. And so what we've been asked to do is how do we help outside of just product and cart? And so we've now been working on a whole series of models that allow us to be able to predict bounce at every single step of the journey. So you could have a different experience for somebody on the homepage versus somebody on a search results page versus somebody on a PLP page, and making sure that we're touching all of those portions of the funnel. Oh, and people do ask about Gen AI because everybody wants to know about Gen AI. So
of course.
Even though it's not like our core focus, one of the things we've been able to leverage pretty interestingly is that we've taken where others have seen success and made it better. So Amazon has this functionality where all the reviews are actually summarized by AI to show you a summary of what all the people are saying. We just built that. And so now one of the things that's actually interesting is that our retailers, rather than popping up a 5% discount or a free shipping reminder, potentially giving away any kind of margin for certain products, can say, hey, before you go, did you realize that these are these amazing reviews, that this is what people are saying about this product? And so we can surface those sort of things up. And that sort of checks our Gen AI box and says that we've done something in that space so that people can stop asking us about it.
And I guess in theory, you could also, like, if the merchant has predefined messages and predefined scenarios, then you could perhaps over time use Gen AI to craft and effectively reword that in real time for that specific user or that specific scenario, to where it's highly likely to create a situation where those will convert, depending on the prompt engineering behind the scenes to make that happen. So it definitely, I think Gen AI has its place. I think it's being inserted into areas that kind of make you question whether that makes sense or
Everything.
not. But certainly, yeah, it's everywhere under everything. And basically, if you don't have AI in your name, you won't get VC funding for sure. But no, look, I love that. I love the fact that you're being selective. You're not just saying, hey, we're AI for AI's sake here. We're going to inject it where it makes sense to do so for the customer experience and to enhance the customer experience and remove friction from the buying journey. That's what we're here to do, not just inject AI just to say that we've got AI. So I love that. I love that. And do you think that you guys would be the type of technology that some sort of personalization platform would like to acquire? Now, I know that you guys may not be open to acquisition and you guys may want to hold on to this company forever, but it feels like just, how Anosto over time, they were originally just a personalization engine. Then they bought Search Company, and then they incorporated, because at the end of the day, they need to understand the touch points of things like when a customer makes a purchase, when they add products to their cart, when they abandon, what they're searching for, what categories they hit, what product pages they need to have all this information under one roof to be able to personalize the entire buyer journey from the time they land on the website to the point that they check out. So all these independent search, merch, and personalization platforms, there seems to be a great reckoning happening in that industry right now, where there's a lot of consolidation happening, where there's really no just standalone enterprise search platforms anymore. They're all fusing together. They're all buying. There's a lot of M&A activity out there right now, and with good reason, because all those parts of the customer journey need to inform each other. And so does it feel like your platform would be ripe for somebody like a Nosto, for example, to acquire, so that they can help manage the over personalization of experiences where maybe it's not warranted?
Yeah, I think it could be. The reality is, I think we don't think about it that much. I think when you have hit profitability and you don't have any debt and don't have VCs,
You're very attractive, full stop.
you get a lot of revenue that. But when you're an operator like we are, and you've got the kind of revenue we have, we're like, oh, this is a pretty fantastic business. Why sell it unless it was just like some sort of insane kind of a buyout deal? I think a personalization vendor could be a potential buyer. I think also an e-commerce platform could potentially come in and say, hey, look, we want to lock up the market with this technology, and anybody that uses our e-commerce platform gets to use this technology. So I think there's an opportunity down that path as well.
And then you have your solution providers that are trying to control the entire funnel, so the Adobes of the world. So I think there's definitely options, and it's interesting. But as Zabe said, right now we're just focused on growing the business. And if we do a good job doing that, I think all that stuff will work out on its own.
Yeah, in addition to the business, you also have to keep in mind the fact that we actually have 2.7 trillion data points on what people do, right? So if you have to look at just the sort of data underneath the hood, again, it is anonymous. And so if it were to ever get compromised, we're not putting anyone's identity at risk. But if you look at what's the refer of a person, time of day that they visit certain products at a certain price, and then what happens, what's the outcome? And you can model that across hundreds of thousands of different kinds of scenarios. That data in itself is a treasure trove.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a capability of what we've built and what our customers can do with it. There's the incremental revenue that we generate for our customers, which, by the way, for some of our customers, we generate over $150,000 to $180,000 of incremental revenue per day, not per week or per month, per day in incremental revenue. And then you've got the data that's underlying all that. When you look at that stool and you look at those three components that make up that stool, which is Metrical, I think there's a lot of value there. And it would be pretty hard for us to give that up unless it was some sort of a very compelling reason.
$1 million.
1 billion. No, awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Look, I love it. Yeah, you missed a few zeros off the end of that, RAMEET. Look, no, I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I think that, again, this is yet another example of a area. I recently had another platform on where they sit behind the unsubscribe layer of subscription platforms. So they fit in that one little sliver of an area where when people show intent to unsubscribe, they intercept that and they create a new journey and they create a new opportunity for the customer to remain subscribed. And so I'm seeing this happen more and more, where there's these larger pieces of technology, but there are certain elements of the customer journey that still slip through the cracks with those larger, more monolithic platforms. And I'm seeing more and more technologies like yours fit into those gaps and say, look, these technologies are great. They're amazing. They do cool stuff, but there is a gap. And there are customers that slip through the cracks. Even when those big, heavy, monolithic technologies are deployed, there are still customers that fall through the cracks. And we want to make sure and be the safety net there to make sure those customers don't fall through those cracks. So I love it. I love the thinking behind this. I love the niche nature of this. I love the fact that you are suppressing over messaging and over personalization of customers. I love that too. I think that there are too many technologies out there that can be installed at the same time on a website that compete for eyeballs. And I think that's the concern. That for me is the concern, because I have been a victim of it myself as a buyer on e-commerce websites. I do 90% of my shopping online. And so I know I'm abnormal in that regard, but the reality is I have been a victim of this, and it is overwhelming. And so I see the need. I've firsthand experienced the need for your technology. So it makes perfect sense to me. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Hours absolutely flown by. I love to give. This is the point where I get to flip over the microphone. I get to hand the microphone over to my guests. I get to let them ask me one question, any question they like. So, ZABE and RAMEET, what is your question for me today?
It's a great idea, first of all. I think the question that I would like to ask is that over the last year, what technology vendor or solution have you come across that sort of has blown your mind? Like, what's the most compelling kind of solution?
There's been a heap, actually, because I do release 3 episodes a week. So I do come across a heck of a lot of cool technologies, which is amazing. So it is a little overwhelming. But I'll tell you one that stood out to me that isn't directly a commerce technology, but they enhance the commerce experience. And that is a platform called Locally, Locally. They are a US-based technology and commerce platform. And they effectively are instead of being a store locator platform or a dealer locator platform, they are an inventory locator platform. And so, in other words, if I'm a brand, let's say I'm a manufacturer and I have a D2C website, but then I also sell through retailers, through partner retailers, I want to be the central source of truth for all the inventory that a customer could buy, whether they buy it through me directly or whether they buy it through one of my retail partners. So instead of coming to that D2C website and saying, okay, I can find a store locator for all the retailers that carry my brand, instead, I actually want to show exactly which locations have that SKU that I want to buy, so I can literally walk in and buy it today. So what they're doing is they're creating effectively a phygital experience. And I experienced this with the laptop I am on right now. I bought this the last time I was in the US, and I was on a road trip with my wife, and I was on a business road trip, and I needed to buy a new laptop, but we were staying in a different place every single night, so I couldn't have it shipped to me. So I needed to literally walk into a store and buy this over the counter right then and there. And short of going to a Best Buy website, for example, and actually trying to use their store locator to find that item, the great thing is, so this happens to be a Dell laptop. With Locally, I could have gone to the Dell website and found all of the retailers that carry this exact SKU of this product and who has it in stock in that specific location, where I could literally walk in and buy it that day. So I think Locally is bridging that physical digital gap in a way that I've never seen before. And I love that. I love the fact that manufacturing brands can help drive foot traffic for their retail partners by being the font of all knowledge of where you can buy their products. And I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
What I'm excited about, Jason, is if you get this question in a future podcast, you're going to say Metrical. Now, that was a technology that blew me away. So
no brainer. Absolute no brainer. I've loved it. I can't wait to speak to you again soon, gentlemen, and figure out like in another 12, 18 months to learn more about what you've added to Metrical in the meantime. So thank you guys. I really appreciate your time. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.